need to really keep in mind that there is a growing movement out there that wants to end all human life. Anyway,
From one
the
I don't
Russians
know, I
love
guess.
their children too. We'll be fine.
Such an ignorant thing to do if the Russians love their children too.
The problem is that these people don't have children and know they don't love them.
I hope the Russians love their children too.
And they really do want to kill you all. And they could end up in nuclear silos. They could end up in positions of power. And we need to keep in mind just how dangerous the forces arrayed against us really are. You know, while we try to be as pluralistic as possible, we need to understand that they want to remove consent from everyone. Everyone.
If you could end suffering tomorrow, yeah, probably anything is justifiable. Inflicting just about anything is probably justifiable. Imposing just about anything is probably justifiable.
They are, I think, the truest and purest form of evil in the world today. And it feels really good that there are enemies because I know I'm on the right side. It's like you get to a Holocaust camp and you're like, oh, these guys are clearly the fucking bad guys. You get to an FLS subreddit, you're like, oh, wow. You could not more clearly signal that you're evil, but they are growing and they're growing faster than us.
Yeah. Gird your loins, ladies and gentlemen.
Would you like to know more?
So Malcolm, I'm not really sure when this is going to go live, but we are very rapidly approaching the end of the year 2023. This has been a wild year for us. Through the generosity of the Survival and Flourishing Fund, a significant amount for pronatalist advocacy work, which got us really tapped into the community, to the global landscape. We've spoken with journalists across the world, Germany, France,
politicians,
thought
leaders,
just individuals. It's been wild. And I came in with a very different perception of the forces arrayed against pronatalism that I have now at the end of the year. I came in thinking the forces arrayed against pronatalism are just it being hard to have kids, it being expensive to have kids, it being daunting to have kids, the regulatory load being too high, and those things matter. But what I'm realizing is really at play, and this is something that came up at the Natalism conference in Austin that we attended in December and spoke at, was it really what this is there's a war on the horizon. And it is between people who are pro-humanity, pro-existence, sentience, life. I'm not saying pro-life like anti-abortion. I'm saying pro-life like I like the fact that things exist and feel, and anti-life. And this is something that we first got the rumblings of in like various off-the-record salons and dinner parties we were hosting, where we would bring up demographic collapse and pronatalism among major leaders, investors, politicians, influencers, etc. And the most common pushback we got, it was never any of the things I thought were the big bads. It was never expensive, blah, 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 regulatory, blah, blah. No, it was, but wouldn't the world be better off without humans? And we're like, wait, what?
Wait, what? But this is an undercurrent within a lot of anti-natalism, and it's a much bigger and more philosophically robust undercurrent than I think many pronatalists give it credit for.
Yeah, exactly. It is logically consistent, and in the frame of modern progressive urban monoculture society, it is the logical conclusion because it is a negative utilitarian mindset.
Yeah, if you're interested in going into our deep dive on negative utilitarianism, why we are not negative utilitarians, go find our video on negative utilitarianism. Just so people know, whenever I mention a video in one of these videos, typically up here, I'm going to post something which will appear like a little link that you can click if you're on YouTube, which will take you to that video. And I often also at the end of a video include in the recommended videos, the videos that we have been talking about in that particular video to make it easier for you to find them.
Yeah.
And this one I'm almost certainly going to include, if I remember, the video on negative utilitarianism. So, these are individuals who essentially believe that while negative emotions are a thing of negative value, positive emotions are not a thing of positive value. It's not as insane as it sounds if you go into it in detail. But this philosophy is the core philosophy of the anti-natalist movement. It is not the environmentalist philosophy. All of that is sort of ancillary. Like, yes, environmentalism is nice. Like, yes, some of the other things, But if you look at ethalists, right, which is one of the core players in this community, which we'll go into in a second, or if you look at like negative utilitarians that we have debated, they actually don't want humans to stop existing right now because we don't yet have the capacity to kill all animal lives before we kill ourselves. And so they want to ensure that we can do that so there's not a risk of some other animal coming to evolve into humanity, or the horrible things that are happening in nature all the time. And they're right. I mean, nature is a horrifying space. These are not logically inconsistent communities.
Well, although we do have to divide it up, and this is something. So Malcolm's referring to Lawrence, Anton, and company, a group of anti-natalists based in the UK who are among the leading anti-natalists, and they're both very logically consistent and reasonable. They're the ones who hold the view that they want all sentience to end because all sentience is suffering, and it is very logically consistent on their end to be like, man, have you like seen how animals die? Like it's way worse than, you know, like there's a lot more suffering units going on there than like the human suffering units if we're looking at this practically speaking, especially in developed societies.
Like the EA community in shrimp.
Yes, but then there are also the environmental anti-natalists who just think humans are bad.
The human extinction movement. So, I mean, let's talk about some of these. Let's pull up the human extinction movement website.
Okay.
So let's see what they say. So they're called the Voluntary Human Extinction Movement, if you want to look at this. And they say on their website, phasing out the human species by voluntarily ceasing to breed will allow Earth's biosphere to return to good health. Crowded conditions and resource shortages will improve as we become less dense. I love how like underplayed that is from voluntary human extinction. See what's been happening lately in the movement. They're talking about how they were interviewed recently in the movement. They're talking about Elon Musk, who they hate.
Of course.
But some environmentalists have gone so far as to thinking humans are bad, and of course they don't like that. This is, you know, it is one of the larger movements. It is an environmentalist movement, but
and I think it's the most consistent. Like when people at those salons we've hosted have said, wouldn't it be better if humans didn't exist at all? They are in this group. And I think this is in terms of people who don't put thought into this, and that is the majority of people. They're in this group. That is not all life is bad.
Is dumb.
Yeah, but also like and keep it again, most people don't put thought into this. Most people who aren't putting thought into this are just tacitly assuming humanity bad, humans evil, corrupt, capitalism, blah, blah,
right,
blah.
Which is different from the negative utilitarian group who want all animals dead.
But who are also very thoughtful. They're in that they're
very thoughtful. And this is where people are like, well, if you say that they're thoughtful and everything like that, yeah, but our views are also logically consistent. And here's the thing. We are trying to create a diverse and flourishing human empire, and they are trying to extinguish all life that exists in the universe. Who's the baddies? Like, this is not difficult for me to figure out who are the bad guys here. I am happy that I happen to live at a time in history where so unambiguously there is one group of good guys and one group of evil guys. And keep in mind, you know, being part of this pronatalist community does not mean you have to have kids. It just means that you work to support what the movement is doing. There's many ways that you can do that outside of having kids yourself. But it is, which team are you on? Are you on the death to all things team, or are you on the, you know, let's improve the quality of our species. Let's improve the living quality of our species. Let's improve the amount of suffering that's happening in the world, where we don't think suffering particularly matters, but on the margin, it's pretty easy to improve at this point. But you wanted to say something, Simone?
Well, I mean, honestly, though, like you say that, like it's so unambiguous, but I have moments where I feel like I'm so gaslit by society about all this stuff where like I do find myself questioning. And I think, you know, and I'm like, wait, is humanity really I lose the plot, because I'm also like in any social situation, I'm like an LLM. I'm just trying to like give whatever response and follow whatever reasoning like pleases the crowd the most. And I really do feel like this is how many people may have felt in Nazi Germany when they're like,
why do we hate Jews so much?
Yeah, they're like, but like, haven't you seen what the Jews do to society? Haven't you seen that everything that's terrible is their fault? Don't you understand? They're the only thing standing between us and the perfect society. And like, you're sitting there and you're like, this can't be right, but you're making me feel really bad. Like you're acting like I'm the baddie here. And like that's the thing is I do feel like this very large and growing proportion of society is just like, well, it's so obvious that humans are the bad guys. It's so obvious that we need to get rid of all humans that a lot of people are being gaslit. And again, this is the people who
Well,
aren't
I mean,
putting much
and
thought
this is
into
a
it, but
follow-on from what these groups have done before. So these groups, as a form of penance and a form of status signaling, they have increasingly, to status signal to their community, talk about how bad their group is. And, this started with white people are evil,
um,
white people are evil, or
right.
America is evil.
Yes.
America is evil. If
Yes.
they're Americans, they can say that, and that grants them status within their community because it makes them look like introspective and humble, even if they don't understand really why they're saying what they're saying. And so this has just expanded outwards and outwards and outwards to
Mhm.
humans are evil, where the larger an in-group that they are targeting with their this group is evil rhetoric, the more that they gain status within these communities. And so it's just a natural descent from that. In addition, it removes more responsibility from them. If humans are evil, then they can do whatever they want. But I want to go over, like, let's just go to the Ephilism subreddit right now. Like, what are
Okay.
these people talking about? Because I think that people,
Oh
this is
God.
life spelled backwards. They don't really understand how extremist these communities are. So the top vote on Ephilism right now is a poll that says, seriously, why are there so many anti-natalists obsessed with consent? And the
Oh
poll that
boy.
they're citing is, what will you do if 99.99% of people on Earth accepted the truth of antinatalism in the future? And then it was, a portion, 22% said use democracy to sterilize them. Wow. So they would use democracy to sterilize the people who were going to plan to keep having kids. 9% said verbally bombard the 0.001% until they accept antinatalism. And then 63% said leaves the 0.001% alone, even if they end up repopulating the earth. So this is a constant problem with them. Consent is a problem with them because they are a totalitarian movement. Like the pronatalist movement doesn't really care what antinatalists do, right? Like they're removing themselves from the gene pool.
Yeah.
They are removing themselves from the cultural
They
pool.
don't need them to do anything.
Yeah, we don't care. Like we are a genuinely pluralistic movement fighting for pluralism. They are a totalitarian fascist movement that wants to take away other individuals' rights.
Well, no, so here's the thing is again, like Lawrence Anton and company, like that group of antinatalists very vehemently believes in consent and it's logically consistent with their views because they're very against
I
causing
think
human suffering and no just
you're
I'm
drinking the Kool-Aid. You're not
well no no
really
no hold
listening
on
to
hold
what
on
they're saying.
let me finish. Okay. I because I understand what you're saying. They do really they feel deeply morally uncomfortable with the idea of doing anything that causes more and unnecessary suffering. However, in the end, they I think know that there will be no way to actually achieve their end with consent. That you cannot convince everyone to do this. You just can't.
Well,
And
and
so
this
in
is
the
the
end,
point
there
of
is
this
no
poll.
choice but to take away your
Yeah,
autonomy.
but
Hear this short video by one of the leaders of the anti-natalist community.
Yeah, so look, in the interest of the end, if you could end suffering tomorrow, yeah, probably anything is justifiable. Inflicting just about anything is probably justifiable. Imposing just about anything is probably justifiable if you can end it. If there's literally you can guarantee no more ouch ever again, then there probably isn't a big enough ouch you could make that wouldn't be justified in the interest of that end, probably by any means necessary. Like if I found out tomorrow that the only way that sentient extinction could possibly happen was skinning all the living things alive slowly, I'd hate it. But I would say that it's what we have to do. I'm totally on board with the idea that the only thing that really matters is the suffering coming to a finality. So, yeah, anything in the interest of that, if you can guarantee that, even despite whatever imposition or nastiness might be necessary.
what's interesting about this poll, it does show that still 63% of antinatalists, now keep in mind that means a lot don't feel this way, 63% still wouldn't force that last 0.001% to be infertile.
Yeah.
So well,
And I think that's, when you look at and when we talk about in the Pragmatist Guide to Life, objective functions, like what are your inherent values? You can have a basket of objective functions. And I think what you're looking at is there's a segment of the population here that holds a bunch of different values. One of those values involves consent and not coercing people into things. And that ranks a little bit higher than exterminating all sentience. So, for that group, that matters. Whereas for the other group, exterminating all sentience and all suffering is more important than the inherent value of consent and non-coercion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, so, and so here's an example of another F-list top post right now.
Oh boy.
If you think you are a failure, think about whatever it is that is responsible for the creation of the universe. You will never be as bad. God is always worse
God,
than you.
what a douche.
Yeah, I almost want to do a recurring segment where we just talk about whatever F-lists are talking about these days. It's like what's going on in that subreddit. So another website that was brought to my attention recently is Stop Having Kids. So stophavingkids.org, and they seem to be like the most officially looking website within the anti-natalist movement.
I don't know if official includes uncanny valley nonsense. That is some weird
Well, they do.
stuff.
They are not as competent as pronatalists, but the IQ of anti-natalists isn't as high as pronatalists. I mean, keep in mind, these, as we say, the greater replacement theory that the intelligent autists are going to replace everyone else because that's mostly within the pronatalist movement. These are people that are, and this is something that Dutton pointed out on our show, when you have one thing that's a genetic problem with you, you're likely to have a cascade of other things. So, if you're low IQ, you're less likely to be attractive and you're less likely to be happy. Outside of the highest levels of IQ where you do get some depression issues, but even still, like, these individuals are just not fit individuals and are dealing with a lot of mental internal stress.
And that is something that even people within the movement are like, this is a really big problem. Like, there are just a lot of very depressed people here.
Well, and so I'd point out, and what I'm pointing out here is the pronatalist movement is much smaller than the anti-natalist movement right now.
It is.
And
yeah.
the amount of funding that we have is much lower than the amount the anti-natalist community has. And yet you look at their websites and they look like, the first one, the voluntary human extinction, I'll post a picture of it here. It's literally like an all text website.
Yeah. What on earth, guys?
And then if you look at the Stop Having Kids, it's a bunch of uncanny valley, like AI art stuff.
Nightmare fuel.
It is genuinely nightmare fuel. Like, they couldn't find anyone who wanted to be publicly associated with this.
Well, the thing is, though, like, all they had to do was go to what I do. I love it. Pixabay. It's a free website that has royalty-free, like, public domain stock images. They could have gotten everything they needed there, but instead they're like, I'm just going to use AI to make the creepiest image possible.
So they've got things like make love, not babies. You can't
Just the fact that someone refers
the best way to avoid
population
hell
as
is to
making
never
love.
be born.
Oh boy.
Be a voice for the childless. Use your voice to speak out against procreation. Aren't distractions wonderful to have? But why bring someone into the world to distract yourself from how bad life is or something?
But I mean, I agree with that though. Like, again, like, I don't think I'm super okay with anti-natalists convincing people who are deeply unhappy people who wouldn't be good parents to not have kids because they shouldn't have kids.
Well, and they're like funding like billboards and stuff. If only we could. Well, I guess we would never spend money on something so wasteful. Like, people often do not stop to question having children before opting to procreate. What's interesting is we agree with them on all that stuff. Like, I agree with that. We want to change that by ensuring that people consider the option of not reproducing as valid, rational, and responsible in an ethical lifestyle.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get rid of these people. Like, I agree with this. If you look at the top of their website, it's, we want a future where creating biological children is no longer an expected norm or something most people casually do without putting substantial thought and investigation into it.
Where do I donate?
Yes, we completely agree with this. We want that future too.
Maybe I can just contribute by giving them better images.
No, you should say, hey, I'll take over your website for you. I'll make it.
Let me help you. Yes.
and well, hold on. Do you want to do more F-lism?
Yeah. Hit me.
Okay. Well, this person's like, I'm a happy person and I'm an F-list, right? Because some people say that F-list Redditors are just depressed people projecting their pessimistic worldview. Well, I still hold the argument that, they're like, that this is prejudice. And it's like, well, yeah, except realistically, the reason why this is one of the top posts here is because the vast majority of ethalists are not happy. And even one of the posters on here says, is it really pure prejudice though if a high percentage of the posts and comments on here are from people who obviously are upset, distressed, depressed, or even wrathful?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like being like, oh, like I'm a 10. I'm an extremely attractive and smart male, but I'm still MGTOW, or like I'm still black pilled. Like, okay.
Oh, gotta leave this sub, somebody says. So let's see why they're leaving.
Okay.
Militant veganism is too much.
Militant veganism. Oh.
Yeah, so they're just being constantly attacked by their own community.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's so.
What I am going to say though is, as when we had a debate with two anti-natalists, they took us to a legit good vegan restaurant. Oh my! I didn't know you could do vegan food that good. So it's not all bad. They're great people.
This is an interesting one. How should an ideal ethicist live with an average IQ? No, that's not that interesting. I guess not much aside from not reproducing. If you still want a family, adopt a kid. Except they never adopt kids. The people who adopt kids are always pronatalists.
I think we've been, I asked on Twitter and someone gave me one person. One person. So there was once.
One person who?
Adopted. One anti-natalist who adopted.
Yeah, but vast majority, if you look like genuinely at the people who adopt lots of kids, often they have lots of kids as well.
Oh, no. The biggest adopters are pronatalists who like already have a ton of kids. And this is so common. Like if you watch Dream Home Makeover on Netflix with this like couple that I think they're a Mormon couple, and they like redo the houses of really wealthy other Mormon couples who have a billion kids. Mm-hmm. Like it's super common to see like they've adopted some. Same with like if you go on Instagram and look at really large families, like one or two or even sometimes even more of the kids are obviously adopted. Like it's crazy.
By the way, speaking of people who are like, oh, anti-natalists aren't depressed, the ethalists aren't depressed. So here is the #1 post on the ethilist subreddit right now for the last month in terms of upvotes. It's stupid how we're told to, quote unquote, toughen up when we struggle with life, but at the same time, we're not allowed to kill ourselves.
Wait, who says they're not allowed to kill themselves?
Yeah, and this is interesting. I mean, they are true that society largely says they're not allowed to kill themselves, but not us. I mean, we run the pronatalist movement, or we're largely seen as running it, and we are hugely pro people killing themselves. Like, the existence is a choice, but it's a choice you make for yourself and not for other people.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?
What am I waiting for? What am I waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
Fuck you!
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, and it's a choice you make for yourself with knowledge and, time and thoughtfulness. I don't believe in impulsive suicide, and I don't, think that there are some people who are not of sound enough mind to make a good decision on that front.
Here's another one of the top posts. You have to be somewhat blinded to the truth to stay alive in this hell world. Life is all about pointless suffering and chasing pleasure to get temporary relief from suffering. Then you pass on the torch to the next generation so they can repeat this cycle. If you manage to do that, then you, quote unquote, won at life. Like... So I love this idea that life is all about pointless suffering and chasing pleasure to get temporary relief from this suffering. It's like, speak for yourself, motherfucker. Like, and that's the core reason that these people are so unhappy, I think. Is for them, that's really what life is all about. It's about this pointless chasing. It's about this pointless chasing. And
fun.
Because that's what they think life is about. The children for them are just another source of masturbating their own egos and their own self-worth and their own happiness. They do not understand, as one of my favorite comments ever underneath our own channel stated, it was, why are you worried that the future is going to be a worse place? Why are you trying to make the future a better place if you are not personally going to get to experience it?
Oh,
this, I think, is the core difference between meaning pronatalists and anti-natalists, is this idea of That's the point. The truest form of happiness, the form of happiness that you personally have been unable to achieve yourself, comes from meaningfully living conscientiously and intellectually sound value systems.
Mhm.
When you know what's right and what's wrong, and when you live by that value system, and you don't have some sort of doubt, like it's not something that's meant to just justify what you wanted to do already. When you are making actual sacrifices, both intellectual and personal, to make the world a better place, and you see success in those endeavors,
Mhm.
that creates a form of happiness that is more indelible and more persistent and more genuinely fulfilling than anything these antinatalists can feel, because they aren't living in that world. And so they likely have really never experienced true happiness.
Yeah, but let's talk about the broader issue, right? The coming war, because I think this is what matters. And I do think that a problem that we will face with the pronatalist movement is that a lot of people who would otherwise, who really probably want to have kids, who would tend toward that lifestyle. Like, look at me, right? Like, I was raised in a very anti-natalist society. None of the girls that I was friends with ever planned on being mothers or planned on getting married. It was just not like part of life, right? You maybe started a business and all this other cool stuff, and you travel and have fun, but like you weren't going to become a parent. I do think that this growing divide of like humanity bad versus no, let's have kids and families is going to be something that picks off a lot of people who would otherwise be amazing parents, love being parents, raise awesome children, really enjoy this, and people who will be a lot more miserable without that lifestyle. How do we deal with that? Like as pronatalists, how do we head that off? I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to our education reform work, right? Like giving people a different pathway to become empowered professionals.
You need
and
to take them out of the
adults.
existing cultural framework, because the
Mhm.
existing cultural framework is toxic and what leads to this.
Yeah.
The virus, the cult, whatever you want to call it, it is what's causing this.
Yeah.
And it is what is nurturing this. I went to the most voted F-list things in the last year to
Okay.
get an idea. And they have a meme where it's a crying guy and then Chad guy. And crying guy is saying, but to eliminate all suffering, we would have to destroy the earth. And then Chad guy is saying, yes. And it's titled Beta Philosophers versus Sigma Ephelis. And the
Okay.
first comment there is, but what about consent? In silly letters, right?
Mm.
And under that, it says people who impose suffering and death on every future generation without consent. Like this is genuinely the stuff they think. The next comment here, which I think is really interesting because it shows just how disgusting these people are as human beings, is so they see, Chad guy was a beard and everything like that, being the good guy in a meme.
Mhm.
And they say, the idea of this meme is good, but the execution is disgusting. Memes teach that this dude with the beard on the right is always the reference asshole, racist, sexist, homophobe, and so on. Putting the ideas of ephilism into the mouths of assholes is wrong.
Oh,
They are so extreme that they see the guy that like everyone considers the good guy in these memes, the based guy in these memes. And they're like, they just associate it with evil because they're living this like childish pursuit of the most infantile perspective of what good is and what evil is.
golly. Well, yeah. All right. So if this is the growing war, I guess the answer does come back to what we've been discussing in so many posts, which is just, all right, then we have to opt out of this. Just opt out. Educate our kids separately, build separate economies, get out, protect yourself while you can.
And eventually,
Wow.
if these people do become a threat, if they do get access to AI and stuff like that, that can do what they want to do, which is Venus or destroy the planet. We need to really keep in mind that there is a growing movement out there that wants to end all human life. That song where he's talking about the Soviets and he's like, if they love their children too, they're not going to end the world. Anyway,
From one
the
I don't
Russians
know, I
love
guess.
their children too, we'll be fine.
Such an ignorant thing to do if the Russians love their children too.
The problem is that these people don't have children and know they don't love them.
I hope the Russians love their children too.
and they really do want to kill you all. And they could end up in nuclear silos. They could end up in positions of power. And we need to keep in mind just how dangerous the forces arrayed against us really are. And we need to, as judiciously, remove them from any position that they could use to destroy all life and remove consent from other individuals as quickly as possible. Because, you know, while we try to be as pluralistic as possible, we need to understand that they want to remove consent from everyone. Everyone. They are I think the truest and purest form of evil in the world today. And it feels really good that there are enemies, because I know I'm on the right side. It's like you get to a Holocaust camp and you're like, oh, these guys are clearly the fucking bad guys. You get to an FLS subreddit, you're like, oh, wow. You could not more clearly signal that you're evil. But they are growing, and they're growing faster than us.
Yeah. Gird your loins, ladies and gentlemen. And Malcolm, glad that I'm marching into the future with you. It's sometimes a little scary, but
well, I got, somebody has my back, the shield. You always protect this family. And I really appreciate that, because I would not be able to take the aggressive moves that I am taking as an individual if you were not protecting us.
Well, we won't escape the darkness unless you aggressively march us toward the light. So thank you very much, Malcolm.
Shield and sword marriage.
There you go.
Yeah.
Love you.